Well, it's time for Media Watch now, and James Creedon's with us in the studio. Good to see
Hi,
you.
Laura.
James, you're taking back to our top story, the chaotic election result in Italy. No clear winner, a lot of horse trading ahead. And let's start with the reaction from the Italian media.
All right, the front page is kind of the tone, I think, says it all. We could stop after showing then, but we'll do some more in the other the world's media as well. Ungovernable Italy is what La Stampa is calling the current.
Ingovernabile.
Very good. Excellent pronunciation. And here we have Dancing Under the Stars. It's a slightly poetic way of putting it. That's Il Manifesto, the Roman daily.
Is that right, left?
It's sort of centre, but they're just, poetically talking about the success of the five-star movement, I suppose.
Oh,
what
feminine.
a mess. Che bordello.
Che bordello.
Which is similar to quel bordel, as they say in French,
Yes.
which it's colourful language. It just means...
What a mess.
What a complete mess, basically. And finally, this is Il Fatto Quotidiano, and their headline is Cambia tutto, everything is changing. Everything is changing. Now, what else do we have?
You can see Renzi walking out.
Yeah, that's it. It is a massive
walking in.
shift. Sordid, predictable and doomed. That is one Italian journalist called Paolo Mozzetti. And he said, after the most squalid, empty, cowardly campaign in Italian history, the 8th largest economy in the world is waking up hungover, paralysed by an extraordinary headache and a feeling of profound and total weakness. That sounds pretty grim stuff to me.
And Berlusconi's back.
And Berlusconi's
Nobody
back.
saw that coming, did they?
No. With his, I have a cartoon of him in a while.
Oh, is this the one about the hair? All right. Let's look at the reaction a bit further afield, then. Because this is a real nightmare for Europe, of course, isn't it?
It is, and that's actually what Le Nouvel Observateur, a French weekly, is saying in its editorial. The European Union countries might now be kind of crying about the results, but in fact it's really their fault in many respects. Italy, while it was one of the founding members of the European Union, it is also the country of fascism, I suppose Mussolini, etc. A nightmare period that we thought was over and in the dustbins of the 20th century history, but actually the spectre of kind of fascist political kind of organisation, it could be making a comeback. This was an entirely predictable, even inevitable outcome where the peninsula was left to manage with a massive wave and powerful wave of migration from Africa coming through Libya, and they basically Europe strictly applied what they call the Dublin
Convention,
the Dublin Convention. In other
people
words,
must apply for asylum in the first country.
Exactly, and that this
which was Italy for a lot of people.
That's right. So Italy was left to manage a problem that was, in some respects, a problem.
So it was like, thanks a lot, Europe.
And yeah, so
you didn't help us when we needed you.
That's exactly it. Now, the Washington Post has an interesting take on it as well. In this editorial, they're talking more about the European situation. The traditional structures of political alignment in Europe are broken. Now it started in the smaller countries, but now we're seeing it everywhere. This is a quote by Joseph Janning, who is at the European Council on Foreign Relations. He goes on to say that unlike in the UK and in the US, where you have a winner-takes-it-all system, most of Europe functions along the lines of a proportional representation. That worked quite well when you had a kind of a dichotomy of left-wing, right-wing parties that got between them maybe 80% of the vote. That situation has now completely fallen away and disintegrated, which means you're left with these kind of coalition-type structures that aren't really working that well. We saw in Germany the difficulty of having a coalition, and actually all of those parties, it's only 53% of the vote. The same in Italy, where it's going to be very difficult to have these grand coalitions. And he goes on to say, the age of the tall European leader is over. This political climate doesn't breed leaders. It breeds people who can manipulate the situation in such a way that things don't derail. So it's suggesting that we're in a time of immense change. Kind of on that same note, there is a quote here. There is an article as well in The Guardian by Yasha Munk, who's been writing about this, the problem of liberal democracies faced with populism. And just a quick quote from that as well. In a few short years, everything has changed very, very quickly. So he's talking about the stability that we saw for decades and decades and decades. Those sort of
left, right, centre left, centre right.
That's it.
Yeah.
Political newcomers are now storming the stage. Voters clamour for policies that were unthinkable until yesterday. Social tensions that had long simmered under the surface erupt into terrifying explosions. A system of government that had seemed immutable looks as though it might be coming apart. This is the kind of moment in which we now find ourselves. And I suppose we're seeing that in election after election after election.
Except here in France.
That's right. And actually,
the big exception to the rule.
As we're on that, this is a journalist from France 2. Actually, no, there's two French journalists kind of following the Italian situation that I thought were worth quoting on Twitter. The Italians, who are one of the founders of the European Union and for decades very pro-European, are now saying, ciao, Europe. And this is a journalist for, I think it's France 2, for Le Figaro. And he's actually saying, look, just 5 years ago, Renzi was the sort of Italian Macron.
He was the young face of Europe, wasn't
That's
he?
right.
He was going to.
He represented
take
renewal
control.
and a sort of a positive jump towards a kind of a progressive Europe, if you like, even a kind of a free market orientated Europe as well. Even though he's more centre left today.
He's gone.
Well, he's gone. Exactly. So I suppose it's in other words, Macron might be doing very well now, but who knows where things will go.
Can we have a quick look at your cartoon?
Yes. Okay. So there's a lot of allusion
pick
to
the best one.
the boot. The boot, this is in Libération over the weekend. You can see the hand of fascism coming out of the boot. So a lot of allusions to, even though the Five-Star Movement, there is a lot of debate online about whether or not they can be referred to as populist in the way that other political formations are. This is a boot as well that is a reference to, I suppose, fascism, the boots of fascist...
Jack boots.
That's it, exactly. So that's coming up again and again.
And
You see Berlusconi trying on a boot there as well, but I'm not sure that's an allusion to fascism. And so there you go. Lots of kind of cliched, hackneyed images. The Leaning Tower of Pisa tipping over to the right and whatnot. So there you go.
All right.
It's kind of the theme of things.
Thank you very much for that roundup, James.
Thanks, Laura.
James Frieden there.